Alright, let's talk about some good news for Intel for a change, and at least for consumers anyways. And Intel have announced a new CPU in their lineup. It's the i9-10850k, which is basically a cut down version of the 10900k. And let's just get into the news article straight away. Anthony Garefa from Tweaktown. So he writes, we knew that Intel was preparing a new Core i9-10850k from previous rumors, but it seems like the company is about to announce the latest member of its Comet Lake family of CPUs. Intel is expected to unleash the new Core i9-10850k with the same 10 cores and 20 threads that the flagship Core i9-10900k has, while clock speeds for the CPU, according to the latest reports, have it at 3.6 GHz base and 5.2 GHz boost. Alright, so let's have a look at this chart and see where it lands. And we have the i9-10900k, and the base clock speed is 3.7 GHz, and the boost clock is up to 5.2 GHz. And the i9-10850k, the new CPU, is 3.6 GHz, so a 0.1 GHz difference, and in the boost clock it's also a 0.1 GHz difference at 5.1, and all of the other specs are the same. So that really tells me that this is probably the exact chip clocked 0.1 GHz lower, and that's probably an easy thing for them to do in the factory. That really tells me that Intel is really struggling with their desktop chips. Nobody is buying their 10900k. Even maybe it's just all comes down to gamers who purely want the 10900k for the single core performance and the top of the line CPU performance for those games. But even then, you can get super close with that type of performance on like a 10700k overclocked, and or even a 10600k, and the difference would be so close that it wouldn't be worth the extra $200-300 that you'd have to spend on the 10900k. So not a whole lot of people were buying the 10900k, and also the fact that it only had 10 cores, 20 threads. People were obviously trying to decide whether they wanted this or the Ryzen 9 3950X or even the 3900X, which this is competing with, and it had 12 cores and 24 threads. So for people who were obviously buying a premium PC, they probably thought that, well, if I get a 12 core 24 thread CPU, those 2 cores could actually help me with production, streaming, and all of that sort of thing. Which left the 10900k in a pretty odd spot at $488. And now with the launch of the i9-10850k, it's about $35 cheaper. So all of this points to the fact that this is basically just the price cut. They still had a ton of i9-10900k in retailers' inventories. People hadn't sold out, so they didn't want to just like cut the value of those. They still wanted to keep that 10900k for people who, you know, they don't read as much information and they're not quite as up to date, and they don't know that it's just a 0.1 gigahertz, or maybe they don't know the value of the 0.1 gigahertz difference, so they would just buy the best, and the best would just be the 10900k anyway. But who knows, maybe this 10850k chip will boost as close to a 10900k, and that would be really phenomenal. That you could get $35 off and get exactly the same performance. But yeah, this 10850k kind of tells me that Intel is in some trouble with the 10900k. But you know, obviously that is great for consumers because now you get a $35 price cut, and this becomes really competitive at $453. And still, you know, the 3900X, we're not talking about the 3900 XT, however, just the plain 3900X, that's going for around $420. So this right here, it's still more expensive. So I feel like the proper price for this would probably be around $400, not $453.